Hi, welcome back, everybody. This is Lindsay. This is Linda's Investing. And today I bring you another woman investor from my community, Miss Kenya. And she was gladly accepting my request of coming to talk to me today. And I know she's new to you guys, so I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her story.
Hi, I'm Kenya Warren. I'm an investor in Chattanooga, Tennessee area. I've been investing for since probably 2008 was our very first true real estate investment, myself and my husband. And we took a break because that first investment was a pretty bad deal for us. It didn't do very well, but we have uh, made our way back to investing, started with tax defaulted properties. And then we moved on to actual single family rentals where we're renovating, refinancing, and then renting those properties out.
Yeah, I guess the first question that I have is, are you local to your investments?
Yes, all of our investments have been local. Like I said, that very first one that we did was out of state, and it didn't work out really well for us doing that. One, we just didn't know what we didn't know. So we had a lot of repairs and things like that that would happen on the property, and our property management um, wasn't on top of things like we would have liked them to be at the time. So we, like I said, we ended up purchasing the property for, I believe we purchased it for like 128, and then, years later we sold it for a loss on paper. So it put a bad taste in our mouth for out of state. So all of our properties right now are within 30 minutes to an hour where we live.
Hmm. Yeah. And how did you find real estate? Why made you go even out of state or saying like, let me go and buy a rental so I can rent
Uh,
it to people?
my dad, my dad has always wanted me to be um, independent and be able to do for myself. And so he's always been um, an investor. He's an entrepreneur. He's a dentist, so he has his own practice. And that's kind of what I grew up seeing. And he always, I think he was the one who gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad. So while I was we lived in California for a little while I was out there, I read that book and I was like, okay, we've got to do this. We've got to get on the investor side of the equation. So that was the introduction and the start of our investment journey.
Awesome. And then you mentioned you have a husband. Was he on board from the get-go when you were like, we're gonna buy more houses?
He was kind of halfway the first time. And then, like I said, we kind of got really soured on it because when we moved back here to Tennessee, we still were not in the same state as our rental. And he would try to go down there and do repairs, and it wasn't good. So uh, now he is 100% on board, but we had a big change in um, our lives in 2020 when we built a house and we saw the true value of real estate that we like the from ground up development. So we knew we had bought the property for a really low price. And when we went to get our certificate of occupancy, we had to have an appraisal. And it was way more than we could have even imagined at that time. So that was kind of like the light bulb. It was like, oh, maybe we should do this with other properties. Like we can try this again. So that's
So that was your experience with construction. Did you buy the land and then rough?
yeah, that was our introduction to construction.
Mhm.
So we always wanted to have our dream home here. So we had bought just land that we thought was valuable. And worst case scenario, we were like, we could sell it if we decide not to. But the stars aligned in 2020 or in 2019. And we saw the interest rates were super low. We had saved for years, living off of one salary. Um, and so we were like, all right, let's go ahead and do this. This is the time. And like I said, I'd been researching real estate anyway, so I knew about the construction of permanent loan. And I was able to lock in a super low interest rate. So we were getting into a house that we probably wouldn't have been able to afford if we had just went out there and bought um, a finished property because we already had the equity from the land, in addition to the sweat equity that he put in whenever we were building the house. So
Awesome. That sounds like a big undertaking to buy land, rough land, and bring out utilities and get a contractor and get a construction loan, I assume.
yeah, it was definitely a big undertaking. It was the first time either of us have ever done anything like that. So a lot of paperwork, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of possibly some tears along the way, but we when I say like the end result was, I mean, we ended up with, I want to say it was over a couple $100,000 worth of equity in our property, and um, we just truly weren't expecting that. So
Mhm. Mhm. So it seems like you had the one sour taste out of experience, out of state experience,
yeah,
and you were like, okay, well, let me see what I can do for myself. And then
yeah,
so you bought the land because you wanted your forever home, and then
yeah,
you build it up from the ground up. And then when you came to the place where you're like, oh, actually, this real estate business
yeah.
can be profitable.
Yeah, that's truly what it was. It's like once we saw that, we were like, okay, that what happened, with our previous property is not necessarily the norm. Real estate is actually very profitable if you put in the value, and that's basically our current strategy is just been the what they call the BRRRR method. So we're buying properties that are in poor condition, and then we're typically doing like full remodels, um, and bringing them back to new as new. So they'll have all new mechanicals, all of the big expenses that you would normally be concerned about, have been taken care of. So we can feel confident renting those properties that we will have minimal maintenance calls because we self-manage us.
Mhm, mhm. And then so you're doing bursts, you're buying already at discounted prices. Are you buying when you started, for example, did you do on market or did you start it from the beginning, like looking for off market deals?
Um, so like our very first, what I would call a flip was actually a tax sale property. We went to the tax sale here, and I guess we just got in maybe at the right time. It's a bit of timing. Because whenever we moved from California, I had just started going to tax sales after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I'd learned about those. And I was like, okay, well, let's see if we can get something here. But at Sacramento, it is very difficult to like, there is a lot of money that was there. Um, and we really just weren't able to actually invest, but it was really good to kind of get the experience to see that environment, talk to some of the other investors that were there. And so when I came here to Tennessee, I was able to go to the tax sale, and these prices were were way better. And there were a lot fewer people there. And so we were able to get several properties um, over the next couple of years at that tax sale. And then I want to say, like within a year of us purchasing a property at tax sale, we had someone approach us about, we stuck a for sale sign on the lots, and we sold it almost immediately. I wish we would have waited a little bit, but I mean, it's not a bad deal when you're buying it for a tax sale discount, and then selling it for retail. So
Yeah, and I think it's a very unique strategy to go and get it from the tax sale because there's so many things that you have to do prior to even
yeah,
putting an offer on. So if somebody was to reproduce your technique, not into detail, but give us like a grand scheme of like what that looks like, because I know there's states that are tax sales and there are states that are liens only, and then so it's
Yeah.
different types of like.
So what you mentioned, the tax liens versus the tax deed state. So in the tax lien states, you're basically buying their overdue bills, essentially. And so it's a lien on their property. It's not necessarily that you're purchasing their property, but in the tax deed state, like Tennessee, you go and you actually purchase the deed for the property at the tax sale. Typically, it will sell for the delinquent amount of taxes plus any like lawyer fees or whatever the county or whatever has. But after you're purchasing it, you're going, depending on the state, there's different, it varies county by county, state by state, the redemption period. So some places have a redemption period of, 3 to 6 months. Some places have a year. This is a year here. So we had to wait a year for the deed to season and allow the person who previously owned it to pay the taxes back. But the cool thing about tax deeds is if somebody buys a property at a tax sale for, let's say, $1,000, depending on the interest rate for the state, they will, if they redeem the property, they'll pay you back your $1,000 plus the interest that has been gained over that period. So it's kind of like a CD in that sense, right? So the worst case scenario is it be a CD and you put your money somewhere and you can't really touch it, but at least it's gaining interest.
Mhm.
And you get that money plus the interest back at the end if they do redeem it. On the other hand, if they don't redeem it, then that property is yours. You just have to have the title company do the final cleanup to make sure the title is good uh, once you're done.
Yeah. So the pro is the very low entry fee, right? In which you can get into, like you mentioned, maybe $1,000 property for
Yeah,
paying or back the taxes as well. But there's also some things you have to watch out for when you're
yeah.
purchasing through a tax sale. What are those some things that would want our audience to know?
Some of the things to watch out for with tax deeds are going to be um, other liens that are potentially superior to that one that are attached to the property. There aren't very many. Usually the tax lien will wipe out most loan or liens against a property, such as a mortgage. Uh, but it could be something like a uh, IRS lien that could be attached to it that may not disappear. You also want to go and take a look if you can on at least on like a Google Maps or something to see what the lot looks like to make sure that it's not um, in a floodplain or something that you can't do anything with. Um, and then also, I think those are the two biggest hurdles is just making sure that it's a sellable um, property in terms of in an area that you can actually turn around and sell it if you needed to or wanted to. Um, but then also that whenever you go to truly turn it over into a warranty deed, that it doesn't have any other title issues that could come up and prevent you from doing that.
Yeah. Just to recap that what she said was make sure there's no out surviving liens, right? On that particular house that you're bidding, that tax deed you're bidding. And also there's no like the actual house, if you're betting on a house, it's actually there, that
Yeah.
it's not the county's pictures or zoning. It's
Oh yeah.
appropriate for residential and not like agriculture or commercial or anything like that, in which like that would be according to what you're trying to do for that property. What's your goal for the property, the strategy as well.
The
But
key is to make sure you check that APN number against against whatever's in the county records. Because
mhm,
sometimes the APN they'll have a street address and it may or may not be accurate for that specific APN. So
mhm,
you do have to pay attention to what you're
mhm,
evaluating.
mhm. And as your tax details are they in person?
Uh, yes and no. Some of them, they were all in person, but of course with COVID, one of the counties that we would go to had switched to online, which opened it up and made it a little bit more difficult to get good prices. Like it was a little bit closer to market value than we wanted to pay. Um, and then the other county is still in person, but is planning on switching to online next year.
Mhm. Would you, do you think that the ones in person are less competitive than the ones online?
No, it depends on the market. Because remember the one in Sacramento, that was in person only.
Mhm.
And it was, when I say it was very competitive, you only had a few people that were there, but they were on the phone with like hedge funds or people with deep pockets.
Mhm.
So it was very difficult to be able to get um what I would say was really good prices. Like we were, just starting out in our careers. We didn't have a whole bunch of money to just spend, but we knew
Mhm.
that even if we were spending this money, it was going to be an investment. So um, we came up with as much money as we could at the time. I think it was like $10,000. Um, and we were able to get a couple of properties for that. In Sacramento, I don't think I saw a single property go for under 200.
Right,
So,
right.
so it really depends on the market. So.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I know that definitely helped you. But you said that that property you bought in 2019, a year after, you sold it as is, or did you have to rehab it? You sold
We
it as
sold it as
is.
is. Yeah. It
Oh,
was
wow.
land and it was in a really good area of
Mm-hmm.
town. It was in, as they say, the path of progress.
Mm-hmm.
So, which was the full reason why we bought that property is because we knew it was in the path of progress. My husband worked nearby and knew the area. And he was like, yeah, this is a really good area. I was like, okay, well, we'll go for this one. It's in our price range and it's in the right area. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then give you a little bit more confidence of like you going to the tax sales and knowing what you're actually buying, right?
yeah, a lot more confidence knowing that you're buying something that's not, a super fun site or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then you move on to Burring.
Yeah. Yeah. So our very first property here we bought in 2023. Um it was $73,000. I remember that because it was it's a small house. I want to say it was like 760 square feet. But it was a mess. Like it looked bad. Pretty sure somebody died in there. That kind of property, but we were able to. It was actually an estate, and it was on the MLS. So,
Okay.
um, really, almost all of our properties that we bought since then have been on the MLS for BRRRR. Um, we have one property that we bought with like an off-market wholesaler, um, but I mean the property was it's still what you would call an up and coming area, but we were able to get in and renovate it. It took longer than expected because it was our first uh, true renovation, and my husband had a full-time job at the time. So checking in on the work that's being done and doing work was a lot slower than today, where that's what we do full time. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we were able to, I think, get it fixed up for around 25,000, complete renovation, added central HVAC, um, and uh, we were able to refinance and we were able to pull all the money that we originally stuck in there out, and start the next one. So, and we just kept doing that. Right now we have, I think, six in this area. So,
6.
yes,
Awesome. So you were able to do a 100% successful burr
yes.
from the get-go. That's amazing.
That's, I think the only one we haven't been able to do 100% successful was the, I think it was the third property that we bought. Um, but everything else so far has been 100%. Even the most recent ones.
Yeah. From somebody that's like, let's say that doesn't have a lot of construction background and but has the time to go and check out the burrs and then supervise the work and all those things, what would you say would be like the best advice for somebody that's diving into the first burr?
Um, if you don't have a lot to work with, um, on financial side, but you do have the time, I would just hang out and try to learn as much as I could with the people who are doing the work. If you're hiring work out, if you're not hiring work out, then YouTube University is is king, right? So the things that we didn't know how to do originally, we learned how to do usually through YouTube. But honestly, I will say we had a leg up because building this house, we made a lot of really good connections. Um, we have electrical and plumbing, and we have all the trades that we became close with uh, that were really good. So we at least have a network. But if you don't have that network first, then maybe go into a real estate investment meetup and asking to kind of tag along or see some of the jobs that the other people have going on. So you can potentially learn and ask questions um, there.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that now you've done many bursts, you know what to look out for in subcontractors. But is it just as hard as other people say of like, trying to find a good, reliable contractor or subcontractor? How do you handle those tough situations as a, small investor?
Um, it is very difficult to find good contractors. Really, word of mouth has been uh, our best solution to that. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of times, whenever you post something online and you're asking for recommendations, and then people chime in and say, "I've got this, I've got this, I've got that." Well, it sounds maybe it doesn't sound weird, but I don't know. But if they're really good, usually they're so booked up that they're not having the time to do that kind of stuff. Um, so that's why I say referrals are generally going to be your best bet, is just because if you've got somebody that's spending lots of time online to promote themselves, um, they generally wouldn't have that good of a reputation, at least from what I've seen here. Um,
Mhm.
we know some people who are really good. They have absolutely nothing in the term of website. They may have a phone number. I don't I don't know anything other than their personal cell phone. So
Mhm.
that's why I say I know a lot of people, like, once they find really good contractors, they're reluctant to quote unquote give them up. But
Yes.
creating good relationships and offering some value, even if it's to help that person scout new properties or just do different tasks, provide some value to that person so that, you can at least plug into their network. And then maybe it's not such a big ask if you need help with plumbing and you're like, hey, I know you have so and so. Um, do you think they could help me out? I mean, at
Yeah.
least at least it's a little bit of give and take. So
I do know, like some of my good contractors, they usually have good contractors to refer you to
yeah.
for the other trades. So definitely, like you said, get around your network of people that are actually using these contractors. Because like you said, people that are like out here on online calling you right back,
Yeah.
they're a little too free for my
Yeah,
I'd rather wait like
it's counterintuitive, but it's
Mhm.
very true. Like, you think, well,
Yeah.
they call me right back. Well, why did they call you right back? Because they don't have any other work, or I mean, I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
I said, my husband's a general contractor now, and
Oh.
so he started doing this full time at the end of last year and has been covered up ever since. So every time we finish something, there's at least two or three other things that have popped up on the horizon in that meanwhile. And that's why I said if it's a good contractor, they're probably completely busy just through their own personal network plus professional network. Like, so
Mhm.
creating the relationships, I think, is the best bet for finding. good, reliable contractor.
Awesome. And then you mentioned that you're doing this full time. So are you like in real estate full time now?
I'm not. I actually am full-time as an engineer.
Okay.
Um, but my husband is full-time GC. So he's been, like I said, full-time. It's almost been, actually, I think it has been a year, a full year now. Um, so we've been going off and we're trying to like the projects that we have, we're trying to pepper in so that at least one of the projects that we have ongoing is always one of our own.
Mhm.
Um, so it kind of works out.
And how did you find one rental at a time?
Uh, I think it was on Apple Podcasts.
Hmm.
I heard the podcast for one rental at a time, and he mentioned that it was a school team also. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. So I went and checked it out, and I was like, hey, more people like me, because I feel kind of weird, that my brain is constantly thinking of and analyzing something real estate associated. So it's nice to be able to get in a room or virtual room of other people who are that tapped into real estate and wanting to build wealth one rental at a time. So,
Mhm. Have you dabbled into any other strategies of investments? You mentioned BRRRRs, you now have 6 properties you're self-managing.
yeah.
Do you have any other things like midterm Airbnb going on?
We just started to try midterm. We had our first midterm rental. I think it was at the beginning of October. October, yeah, the beginning of October. So one of the properties that we had just finished, we were looking to do a long-term rental, and the midterm opportunity came up, so we we went with that instead. But I don't have a lot of experience. They've been pretty quiet. They've been pretty good. Haven't had any issues. It's not like short term. We've never done that before.
Mhm.
But I hear short term is more like a hotel, so more concierge. And the people that have been in our midterm they haven't said a peep, really.
Well, hopefully it's smoothly, keeps
Yeah,
on going smoothly.
so far so good.
Yeah. So what does the future look like for you? I know that you're still working, right? But your husband kind of like dwelled into real estate now full time, and I'm sure he gets like to see what the market is doing around you more so now than before,
Yeah.
keeping tabs on like tax sales and tax liens. What is it? What is your future in 5 years gonna look like?
Um, we had kind of a goal to purchase at least a couple properties a year. Um, and so we've had a couple home run deals, but we're looking to get to like a base cash flow where we can essentially cancel out one my salary. Because if we can cancel out my salary, um, we're good. Like I can officially retire from work and go full time into what we're doing. So, um, like I said, I've been doing the bookkeeping for our business for real estate for a long time, and then I just started uh, to offer others that bookkeeping service. So hopefully expanding that. So,
Awesome.
yep.
The self-managing. Would you ever consider yourself managing other people's properties?
Uh, so we are managing one other property, but it's a property we renovated, so we know the condition.
Okay.
Um, we know the condition and we know the owners very well.
Mhm.
So I don't see us offering that publicly to others. Like I said, people that are within our network. If we're confident in the condition of the property and we can work with the owner, we can help like with a modified version of
Mhm.
self-management. Because we created like a little system. I can't remember the guy's name, um, but he was on like it was either Bigger Pockets or One Rail at a Time, and he was talking about the maintenance, it's like almost like a maintenance workbook,
Mhm.
for to provide for your tenants. And
Oh,
so I took that template, a real estate techie, I think is what it is. His name was on
uh-huh.
Instagram. And then so I took that template and I modified it and built it out so that now we can give that to our tenants, our residents, and if they have any questions, they can kind of go through the checklist of if this, then that, for minor things. Um, and then uh, if it's something that is bigger, it gives the number of our handy person, which is our group still. So we can
Mhm.
go address that if it's something. But
Okay.
self-management light.
Yeah. What would you say to another investor, a woman investor that is, early in their investing career, they're barely researching, they're looking at the spreadsheets, they're looking at the market, but they haven't taken that first step yet to get into real estate investing?
Uh, I'd say just do it. I mean, that's the biggest thing is being an engineer. I was always analysis paralysis, so and I understand that when a lot of people look at it and they are like, "Oh, it's so much to learn, and I don't want to, mess up." But I think just taking action, even if it's small action of, you know, networking with the real estate people that are in your area, um, it's the only thing that you can do that is guaranteed to provide you new results, right?
Mhm.
So if you're reading all the time and not doing anything, that's great, but knowledge without action is not really valuable. So
Yeah, you have to execute.
yeah,
There's going to be a point in which you have to get out of those spreadsheets
yeah,
and call the realtor and start putting offers,
yeah,
going through the inspection period and
yep.
closing that deal.
And I would say get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that was, I think for us in the throes of it, sometimes it feels like, why did I do this? But I will say that in those times where we thought, why did I do this, but did not quit, that was where we had our biggest payoffs. Like,
Mhm.
uh, it feels bad, but you know that you took a calculated risk. It wasn't something where you just, threw all caution to the wind and went out there and went after something. You actually thought about it. You've been reading about it. You did your very best to mitigate those risks. Once you go out and make an offer on a property that you've said, okay, this is a good area. This should rent for this. This had the next door rents for this. You're making a calculated risk, and so it's not the same. To have fear whenever you're doing something new with a calculated risk versus to have fear whenever you're just, shooting from the hip. So,
Yeah, I definitely want to echo that message too, that you have to have confidence that you're going to figure it out.
yeah,
And you have to be a problem solver instead of looking at what's going wrong. You have to
yeah.
look at like what can be done.
How can I fix this?
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. That's the mantra of I think every real estate investor there is because there's every single time there's no perfect deal. There will be something that comes up that you're like, oh my gosh, I, why didn't I think of this or what happened? And
Mhm.
but as long as you can buckle down and focus on, okay, well, the problem's here now. How do we fix it?
Mhm. Mhm. How
You'll,
can we
you'll,
turn this around for sure? And then, yes, well, thank you so much, Kenya. You were, one of my guests, and I hope that you come back in the future. And I hope that all of your rentals go well, and we'll see each other around.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.